This here is indeed another 3D printed surfboard. After my not so successful attempt at 3D printing a surfboard a while back, I've since learned how to 3D model, and this is the result of said, learning new skills and just kind of keeping at it and having fun. But I was inspired to do this after coming across a company called Blueprint Surf, and they're doing some really cool revolutionary stuff with 3D printing and surfboard building. So I got a real treat for you. This video isn't about this board. I'm going to make a separate video about this board and how I got it to this point, and then hopefully be able to glass it and surf it. But instead, in this video, I get to sit down and have a chat with the founders, Mike and Luke, of Blueprint Surf, and just to see how they got their boards to the point where they are now. It's a really cool and fascinating story. There's some technical stuff in it, and then there's a lot of talk about surf and surfboards, of course. And also, they're taking orders now for surfboards that are 3D printed, which is super, really cool. So, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did sitting down and having a chat with them. So, I think it's a really fascinating interview, and let's get right into it. And also mention one other thing. While long, this is a really cool interview that would be interesting for people who are 3D printing, because 3D printing surfboards, and also for surfers, because we talk surfboards. On to the interview. Thanks for agreeing to this little chat, Mike and Luke. You guys are from Blueprint Surf. I kind of came across you guys just mostly on Instagram, and I believe you'd reached out about some of the 3D printing stuff I had worked on for specifically around fin boxes, so that's kind of cool. So
Yeah.
maybe just to kick things off, maybe if you guys could introduce yourselves and kind of like what's your story, what's your background, and how you got to this point of 3D printing surfboards.
I studied aerospace engineering in college and focused on composite materials, so fiberglass, carbon fiber, and the way that planes are made is sort of an internal structure and then a skin wrapped around them. So not too different from what we're trying to do with surfboards. One of the first companies that I started was using 3D printing to make these sort of little lattice structures that we used for medical implants. One of the questions that we got from patients that got our implants, from some of the doctors that we worked with, and some of the salespeople that we worked with was, what else could you make with these lattice structures that are light and they're strong, and you can sort of control the way whatever the object is flexes. And we actually had a group of patients from Australia that were really keen on trying to make a surfboard with it. And that project sort of fizzled out way back then. But when Mike was about to graduate from college, I started surfing with his dad a lot more and kind of started trying to recruit him. And Mike, I'll let you take over from there, because that's when you sort of joined the project.
I came from environmental science background in college and been surfing my whole life in Maine and New England, and have made a few boards, and wanted to keep making boards. And then Luke kind of reached out and was like, hey, like, got this idea, I need somebody dumb enough to take it on with me. And we're coming from, although like we've both been surfing for a long time, coming from pretty far outside of the surf industry, which definitely has had its challenges, but also I think there's some benefits that, because a lot of people look at different way to make a surfboard and think it's not going to be as good as, just your PU foam and fiberglass and polyurethane resin. So we're like, let's just take this on and see what we can do. And so that was almost 2 years ago, right? And since then, we've made a lot of bad surfboards. And the first one we got printed didn't even end up in the water. We tried glassing it. It was printed all wrong. It was super heavy. As we've kept printing, and we had our prints done at first from a third-party contractor, we realized they could make a really good print, and we can make a decent board from that. But the shipping was just so expensive. So we're like, all right, let's see if we can get a printer. And then once we got our printer, it was just kind of like gung ho. Like, so now it's basically printing a board a week. and it's been doing that for 6 to 8 months, I think. As we started out just printing the skeleton, like the core, and then we would glue on rails. So we were just printing without supports, and then eventually we're like, well, we want to print rails because it makes it so you can take anybody's design and implement it, and not have to worry about rail shape. And so now we're printing blanks with rails and everything. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I got into it and where we are now, I guess, a little bit. But yeah.
Nice. On your website, the structures are really cool. And I know you're not necessarily the first to start with the lattice. I remember like the lattice structures surfboard. I've seen some, I don't like, I think 10 years ago someone tried it, but to varying degrees of success. But from what I've seen on your site and your videos on Instagram, like you have a fully formed, like 2 years of iterations, and to take you to this point, which is in 2 years in development, that's amazing. Like that's fantastic. I guess I'm curious as to, I think you had mentioned previously you might have used like polypropylene maybe for printing at one time, or now you say you're using, is it PETG?
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken. So why PETG and like the versus polypropylene? And I know for myself, I printed that board back there just for fun, that I was looking at like lightweight PLA, ASA. I looked at a bunch of different materials and looked at their densities, and ASA was light, but PETG was pretty dense or denser. So what made you land on PETG?
I can start from the surfboard side of things. Luke can tell you for more materials, but we started actually with just PLA, virgin PLA. It was cheap and easy, and we wanted to just start printing boards. But it was really hard to work with once we started sanding them, and also just because it's got such a low glass transition phase, like essentially melting. We figured that if the boards got warm in a car, they would just melt, which we don't want to have happen. So we actually went then up to PETG, and we found a plastic distributor who does recycled PETG. That's a really high quality for a decent price. So we started printing those boards, and then we also looked into doing polypropylene as well. And the polypropylene boards have been the best to work with, because although they come off the 3D printer, like essentially in the shape that you're ready to glass in, you still have to sand down those layer lines, as well as just clean up any deformities that happen. The polypropylene sands amazing. It's really good to work with. It's strong. It's also a lot lighter than the PETG. However, it is a lot more expensive to use, and it makes the boards a lot less affordable. So kind of had to make a sacrifice there. I would love to be able to use that material, especially because we got recycled fishing net polypropylene. So I think it'd be a really cool story to have, nets from the ocean that were recovered into a surfboard. And I think we have 4 of them that we got printed. Right now we're kind of focusing on something that's a little bit more affordable, just because no one is going to want to spend that much for a surfboard, so unfortunately. But maybe down the line we'll be able to do those polypropylene boards.
Maybe there might be economies of scale some eventually, maybe or down the road.
Yeah. No, it's also just a matter of getting recycled 3D printed filament in the States is very difficult, because not many people the recycling system in the US is pretty terrible. The EU just has a lot better recycling and upcycling, and so that's the unfortunate situation. However, there are a lot of companies that are slowly getting better and better and cheaper products that we're hoping to use at some point in the future.
Yeah. One of the other challenges with using, so we would really love to use polypropylene or nylon, like Mike was saying. The really good filaments that we experimented with are like 15 to 30% glass fiber reinforced or carbon fiber reinforced. And that keeps them from warping so much. So that's one of the big issues that we have on our 6-foot-long printer, is any warping will peel it up off the bed. So the PETG has been really good for that. But I think, eventually the best answer is that, like, as as soon as we see a fun material, then we'll try to make a couple of boards with it and see if it gives us a better result.
Nice. That's funny. You mentioned now your printer. I think people would be really interested in, so the genesis of your printer, like how did you get to the point where you have such a large printer? I'm assuming it must be a custom build, and like what's it run? Does it run like, Marlin firmware? Is it like off the shelf? How did it get to that point?
Mike, go
I
ahead.
got
You
this
built
one.
it.
Yeah. I did build it.
Oh, okay.
So it's actually a Modix. It's a Modix big 180X. So it's a kit build essentially. It got shipped here in like 16 boxes, and it was the first 3D printer I've ever built. And it took me about a month and a half. And so it runs it has a duet board, runs RepRap firmware. I actually don't love the software on it. I would like to probably use something else, but it's working good for now. But yeah, so it was built. Modix does it amazing. Their printers are amazing, and it's like it works really well, and it's been very consistent, even having it be put together by somebody fueled off of free coffee. So yeah, and it is a what's the build volume? It's about 6 feet long, and I think it's 25 inches wide. And it goes, I don't know how deep it is. I mean, we're building surfboards, so they're not super deep or thick. But yeah, that's the printer we have now. And our decision kind of was to build it or to buy it from Modix, just because it was a kind of something easy. Like we didn't need to design and build a whole custom 3D printer. And also we luckily are working with the Rue Institute, which is a Northeastern, which is like a college. It's based in Massachusetts, but they have a grad school program up here in Portland. So we're partnered with them, where our 3D printer is in their lab. So, we're sharing it with them. So we'll print surfboards, and then they'll also be doing some research for us in optimizing our structure for our boards, as well as doing testing on the filament. So looking at like the consistency of the filament. So that's been an amazing partnership, and we're excited down the line because we've been using all that support material from the boards, because when the boards are printed, they need some supports just for like the rails and stuff. And all that material, we're thinking the next few months we'll start grinding down and re-extruding into more filament so that we can print more surfboards.
I think that's awesome. Okay, just out of my own curiosity, in terms of
Yeah.
bed adhesion, and then
Yep.
let's talk a little bit about the surfboards themselves and like performance and stuff. But
Mhm.
I'm curious about your bed adhesion, because like I know I've racked my brains around like warping and just even printing small things like that. Like it's just crazy. So what do you
Yep.
guys do for bed adhesion? And I guess, and how long does it take to print a board now?
Yeah. So for bed adhesion, we actually struggle with that a little bit, or we have in the past. We have a magnetic beds, which helps a lot just because it makes these super big parts really easy to remove. We're essentially just printing with a little bit larger brim on the support. It's mainly the supports that are actually touching the bottom of the print bed. And our first layer is like 8 hours. So we're printing our first layers, we're printing very slow, as well as printing them slow and a little bit warmer. And we're getting some pretty decent results, especially with just bigger brims in that for those support materials and stuff. Luckily, with this printer, because it takes a while actually, if there are supports that fall down, things like that, I can actually see them, and then sometimes I'll go and I'll pause the printer and like stand things back up. But that happens maybe once every 5-10 prints. So luckily it's also partly just the bed has a pretty good texture to it, and the Modix designed their firmware to probe the bed, level it, and everything is pretty accurate, where the printer will do micro adjustments based on a quarter of a millimeter difference. So that first layer is actually getting on there pretty good, and once we get a pretty good first layer, it stays pretty warm due to that enclosed printer. generally speaking, don't have too much of an issue.
I'll pop maybe an overlay on top so people can see what it looks like.
Sorry, yeah, that was
No,
that
that's
was a bit
great.
technical. Yeah,
Oh
no,
no.
essentially, the Modix printer design being very accurate and on a small scale, and then also just doing a little bit denser first layer so that anything that's printed on top of that has a pretty wide base. And so if things get moved around a little bit, it tends to stay connected.
And I saw in some of the pictures, I think you're using tree supports.
Yep.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
So you can minimize the amount of support material, and that's cool.
Totally. Yeah. And they're actually a lot easier to remove for us, just because our rails are hollow in the middle. So doing other supports would actually make it a little bit more difficult. So the tree, and then also the tree supports are just a little bit easier to control as well once you have a big amount of them.
So for both of you, like how long have you both been surfing? I think Luke, you said you may be surfing all your life, I believe. Was it?
I think I started in like middle school or high school.
Okay, so
Yeah.
good chunk.
Yeah.
So for both of you, you're both passionate about surfing, and then kind of you got into this part of it. So you have experience with all kinds of other boards. I think the big question for people who might buy one of these boards is like, how do they perform? And I know there's also a video you posted on your YouTube channel on the flex pattern of the boards and how you can, I believe you said you can customize it even for people. So maybe if you guys want to speak a little about that and just about the boards in general.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the boards work really, really well in specific situations right now. And they're really designed to work well in the situations that Mike and I go surfing, so waist high to head high, maybe overhead waves. We get like big offshore winds a lot in the winter, especially after a storm goes by. We'll get like a quick pulse of storm swell, but then 30-mile-an-hour winds. So the boards are a little bit heavier than a standard surfboard, but once you're in the water, you don't really notice it. A liter of water weighs like 3 pounds, I think, 2.5 pounds. A liter of water probably weighs a kilogram, right? So, an extra pound or two in the surfboard is sort of like balanced out by an extra liter of volume about. So you don't really notice the extra weight once you're paddling it, but you do feel like this extra drive, a little bit of extra speed, and for sort of flowy shapes like a mid-length, like the twin fin mid-length that we really like. Once you're up on the wave, it just feels amazing. It's super smooth. So that's sort of what we're focused on right now, is designing boards for our area. And then we're working with some shapers in other areas to make like more high performance shapes and really explore more about sort of the high performance side of what these 3D printed structures can do. So you mentioned that flex pattern that we talk about. And from our perspective, we want sort of beginner and intermediate surfers to be able to feel what a board, flexing and storing up energy and then shooting out of a turn or releasing energy. We want every surfer to be able to feel that, so we can sort of adjust how stiff the boards are, which isn't that unique. But one of the things that these structures can do is make a board flex in sort of multiple dimensions, so it affects the way the water flows around the board in different situations. And that's much more of like a high performance thing. So that's one of the things that we're going to be developing over the next couple of months, with shapers in Australia. Hopefully we'll find somebody in California who wants to collaborate with us too, but we don't really have the waves or the pro and semi-pro surfers around here to get that done. So
yeah, I'm up in Canada in Nova Scotia, so it's very similar conditions, offshore wind, not to mention cold, and those nor'easters really, that's kind of where we get a lot of our surf too. So
and also just the having boards for this area is something that, like, I don't know how to make a board that goes well in Point Breaks in California. And so one of the benefits of the way we're doing this is, the boards are all made by hand. Well, I shouldn't say that. They're made by the printer, but they're finished by hand. And so we can get a file from a shaper in California who, normally sends boards to a shaping machine. They could send us a file. We'll be able to print that. Their rails will be exactly, how they designed them. And then, where they place the fin boxes, we'll be able to print that right into the board. So we can take files from kind of anyone, be able to implement that in and then print that out and then gloss the boards up, and they should be, almost exactly how they were designed.
Yeah, the accuracy, especially with 3D printing. So really
Yeah.
it'll come down to also like you be able to custom tailor probably even the weight. I know you probably have a minimum amount of glass you'd probably want because of the lattice structure and the holes, but certainly if someone wanted to make the board even more durable, that certainly wouldn't be too difficult by just adding extra glass to it. But that of course might change the flex pattern as well, I'm assuming. So yeah.
Yeah, we're actually, the goal would be to make them pretty durable. We're kind of trying to lean away towards lighter glass jobs just because we want these boards to be, the underlying reason to do all this. A lot of people ask us, why would you 3D print surfboard? Is, surfboards are all made from petroleum-based products. And if we can remove some of those petroleum-based products from a surfboard, that's awesome. But at the end of the day, like, it's still a new surfboard. So we're trying to make them durable so that people can, have it for 5-10 years, surf it a lot, and not worry about, getting small, getting dings, getting waterlogging, stuff like that.
I guess how durable would you say the boards are, like compared to like let's say an well, maybe not epoxy, that wouldn't be necessarily fair, but like a PU board, because PU boards just that you look at them and they want to ding. So
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Well, it's a good question. We started off making boards that were probably durable enough to run a car over. And they were also heavy. So we went super light. We broke a bunch of boards, and now we're slowly kind of finding that middle ground where they're durable. They're durable enough that we're not going to break them surfing, and they're light enough that they're going to still perform really good. So our goal is to really not have not have them ding in your typical time surfing, especially like those PU boards where you clean off your wax after maybe a few sessions or something, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, I have all these like little deck dings that like are going to be there for the rest of the board's history. So trying to make them more durable than that. I don't know, I guess Luke, you could talk more about kind of the testing that we've done.
Yeah, I mean, so our biggest concern is really making sure that they don't puncture, and they definitely will not puncture. So we've tried, especially like if we have a board break, then that's what we use as our testing. So we'll use whatever, part of it is still solid, and we'll like try to poke knives through it. We'll throw lacrosse balls at it. We'll do a bunch of different stuff. And yeah, I mean, they're super durable. Actually, the ones that we've had break so far have been breaking in like really, really sort of atypical ways for surfboards. So, for example, like we had a series of them that we tried to make super light. The middle of the plastic structure would actually like explode when you put too much foot pressure down. And it was really interesting because you couldn't see it from the outside, but if you'd pick up the board and flip it over, it would sound like a rain stick. And you could feel that it was like kind of soft in the middle. So, it's something that's super unique. I don't think other surfboards will ever like, fail from the core out. And we've had a couple things like that we've really had to learn from and start designing around, because these are, it's a totally different way of making something, even though it sort of gets the same shape as a typical foam surfboard.
Yeah, then all the boards also have vent plugs at the bottom. So if you do get a puncture or something, and you'll be able to drain that water out. And for the most part, for smaller dings, you should be able to just kind of glass right onto it, sand it down, glass right onto it. For most of these boards that we're selling now, we're trying to keep them pretty close by, in New England, just because if somebody buys a board, they get a huge ding, they want it fixed, we'll take it back and fix it if needed. But shouldn't happen. But people drop surfboards all the time. So
Yeah, I mean, we should probably say the only actual, aside from like when we're making an experimental board, the only boards that we've really had break have been we've had a couple of delams from weird situations, like maybe the vent plug was in a puddle or something like that, and it couldn't drain, and then we left it in the sun and it popped or delammed. The only one that has really broken that we didn't see coming was Mike had one out in pretty heavy surf. It snapped in half. But
Oh,
that was after surfing it for like a year anyway. Honestly, I don't think we talk about punctures like they're a risk. We've never seen that happen. And even with like an X-Acto knife, it's pretty hard to poke through. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think I would feel comfortable saying that these boards are super, super durable. And especially when we make them knowing that they're going to go to a customer, we build them a little bit extra tough.
I was just gonna say one more thing is you'll totally see this when you glass that board that's behind you is everybody's first reaction to picking up a board with that hollow middle is they want to put their thumb straight through it. That's all they want to do because they want to be like, oh, is this gonna be strong? And they just put their thumb through it, which you wouldn't really do with a foam board. So we had to design around that, and that just happened to be so. Just for numbers, the decks of the boards are around 13 ounces of glass. And then the bottoms are around 9-ish.
okay. So it's a multiple laminations because
Yep.
I usually use 6 and 4, but that doesn't really add up to 13. So you have some comp sandwiches, I guess, going on, some like a
Yeah.
composites. So do you use any carbon at all, or is it mostly just like, is it S glass, E glass, proprietary? Is it?
There's a couple proprietary layers. We're using e-glass right now, basically multiple layers of 4-ounce e-glass plus some secret stuff. And I think next time we order fiberglass, we're going to bump up to S-glass just to see if we can make them a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
Sure.
We started out with we bought a bunch of e-glass knowing that we'd be using it. And obviously you can get probably 10% ish of weight difference, I think, with S glass and a little bit stronger. But it's expensive and we're making prototypes that we're trying to break. So we're like, let's just not burn the budget on these. So, but yeah, I think hopefully in the near future we'll get some S glass, and those should be in the boards pretty soon.
Nice. I saw on your website that you're taking orders now, and I saw that you have a few different models there. I think you even have like a possibly, I don't think it's available, but you're working on a longboard as well. I see,
Yep.
so that should be cool. So what are people able to order? And cognizant of that, you probably prefer to have most of the orders closer to you for now as you're developing this out. But you've gotten to the point in 2 years to this stage where you can actually start selling them, which is really cool. And I also saw I think I saw on your Instagram Skipper surf review. You're printing one for him, I believe. So that'll be pretty cool if you can get one in his hands, and he can do a video about that.
Yeah, that's going to be super exciting. So right now we have the C-Mink, which is our mid-length 20 and super versatile board, and the one that we've been surfing now for the last year or so. That's the one that we can really confidently say if we deliver it to somebody, we expect it to go really well, and we expect them to be super, super stoked on it. We have a fish that we've made a couple of that we have to make some design tweaks to. But I think if somebody wanted to place an order knowing that we're still tweaking the design, or if they wanted to collaborate with us on a design, we would be comfortable making a fish for somebody too. And then same thing with the groveler. We've made a series of grovelers out of that polypropylene recycled fishing net material. And that's a shape that we've gotten plenty of waves on and put in some good time on. So same thing, that one's got some tweaks that we want to make to it when we do sort of the next round of demo boards, but we would feel comfortable making one for a customer if that's the shape somebody wanted.
Yeah, we're slowly kind of implementing more shapes into our arsenal, I should say. The one thing that is it's different from typical surfboard design R&D because we'll print a few boards with some different like structural designs in terms of the 3D printing, and then it is difficult to feel, oh, does this board feel different because of the 3D printing change or because of the actual like change in the board. And so for the boards that for that seam ink that we have for sale, we made an equivalent of it in foam and tried to, compare the two just to see the differences and how they perform. And that was kind of very telling to how we tell customers, how does this foam board compare to a 3D printed board? Do you scale up in size, scale down, stuff like that?
In terms, so I guess that way you're only changing a couple variables at a time, and you can kind of go back and forth and see, like, okay, change this, and then see
Yeah.
if it's actually like what the difference is. So making that other board out of foam makes sense. I guess with just one other question, just around board building though. How much experience, and maybe you might have touched on it earlier, how much experience did both of you really have? I think you might have mentioned maybe not, I forget now, but to go from 3D printing and making a board to maybe not having much experience in making a surfboard, but 3D printing and making it, like it's a big endeavor for sure. How did you guys
Totally.
get to this, like your learning experience, I guess, to get here?
Yeah. Luke, you can start.
Yeah. So I did, I built probably 3 or 4 different things out of composites in college, and worked in a boatyard and worked with a lot of fiberglass through high school and college. So I had some experience fiberglassing and also with sort of, fluid mechanics. So I had some ideas about how surfboards might work, but had never built a surfboard before this project or designed one. But Mike does all the building and design anyway, so I'm not really that important.
Yeah, so I built a bunch of boards beforehand, just in my parents' garage, and nothing crazy. Like, looking back, they're pretty shit. But we're lucky enough to get a grant actually from the state of Maine to kind of assist us with prototyping and board design. And so we partnered with a shaper in Portland who's been building boards for, I don't even know how many years, a long time. And so me and him kind of worked together on kind of the earlier prototypes, talking design, also just talking about like laminating, glassing, keeping them light but strong. So I worked with him pretty consistently for a while, and then now all the board designs we'll talk together through them. And he's strictly a hand shaper, so talk through those boards, talk about his shapes and like what we're looking to get out of it, and then transferring that to the computer. It's just kind of like taking measurements and up onto the computer, and then I'll make kind of subtle design changes as we print the boards and we get a feel for them. I guess long story short, I came in with pretty little experience in terms of relative to how most board builders you'd see at a surf shop. Through this guy kind of mentored me. His name's Nick Alejandro from Nido Shapes. He's been a huge help in just making sure our surfboard craft is up to par. And he builds boards really just mainly for Maine and New England surfers. That's exactly kind of what we're looking to do now, because that's the waves we surf and the waves we know.
I should say, so I have worked in 3D printing for a little over a decade. And I have a bunch of patents on like 3D printed structures and things like that. So that's really where I felt I could add something to this. But, I also have started enough businesses to sort of know that this was something we were going to have to figure out on our own. So, Mike really did sort of about 6 months of like apprenticeship with Nick at Nido Shapes, but we also sort of figured that he was going to have to make, whether he had experience making boards before this or whether or not, he was probably going to have to build 20 or 25 boards using this construction before we were getting consistent anyway, just because it's so different.
We touched on this a little bit before we started recording on the call, just around, there hasn't been really any big change. Maybe Firewire has done some stuff, but there hasn't been really any huge changes for decades in surfboard building until like the close of Clark Foam. And then there was kind of this shift. Everyone was scrambling to build in EPS and other materials. And then we've had a bit of a shift, but it still seems like, and I think it's changed a bit now, it still seems like a lot of surfers still like polyurethane boards just because of the flex. And I don't know if maybe it's a traditional feel or something around that, but it does seem like it's moving more towards epoxy and EPS, some XPS. It sounds like what you guys are trying to do, it's almost like another stage. It makes sense to be able to iterate. It's like rapid prototyping. Well, I guess 3D printing as rapid as it can be. but
Yeah.
you can change something on it, test it, iterate, go back to it. And I think being able to customize the board just like a regular board for the customer is super cool too. But you can customize it by changing it some variables on the computer, so it's measurable as well and repeatable. So
Yeah,
that's
no, definitely. It's one of those things where I feel like the surfing industry is stuck in their, I guess similar to most surfers, they're very stuck in their ways. The refit pipeline has been dead for how many years? The surfboards are not inherently good for the environment. I think ultimately what we're trying to do is just give surfers another option that's, green and sustainable, while it's also something that is going to be fun and perform well. And I think that a lot of people either don't know they have that option, or also, that's not something on the forefront of their mind when they're purchasing a surfboard. There's also all that tech that we can bring into the boards that I think, adds a different complexity than just a typical foam board. And whether or not that interests you into purchasing one, that's up to the surfer. Me personally, something that I never even really thought about, like up until working on this project, I was just kind of like, I like my surfboards a certain way, and started looking more into like how different types of boards and different, flex densities, different stuff like that changes how you surf and the boards you're on.
is really important, because I think the ocean, well, just like the earth, we only have one of it, and we
Yeah.
don't want to really destroy it. And I think surfers tend to, I wouldn't say all surfers, but like price, well, like most consumers, actually, I would say price really drives a lot of the decision a lot of times, maybe for the average surfer. But hey, if you can have the environmental aspect of it too, then, a bonus. I think
Yeah.
also your boards look cool. So I think that's a selling point too. So don't make sure to kind of promote that aspect. I think they look friggin'
Yeah.
they're wicked. They look
Oh,
awesome.
thank you. Yeah, no,
Thank you.
actually, it's funny. We don't really do a lot of advertising, or not trying to, at least on the sustainability side of things, because we did some kind of like polling of some surfers, and people, that was not a deciding factor in a lot of people's purchasing of surfboards, which is like, just the way that the world works, I guess. And so yeah, leaning onto the tech and leaning on to, the look and the aesthetic is a route that we're definitely, going down. But then for those odd customers that do care about that sustainability aspect, it's there. And, we're choosing to print with recycled PETG, which is a lot more expensive than just virgin plastic. The reason is because we have those kind of morals of trying to use more sustainable, and we're using entropy resins, which is I think 29-30% bio-based resin. Yeah, it's just, I guess, kind of small decisions to make in terms of what materials to use, but has a big environmental impact at the end of the day.
I think the way we think about it is that the eco stuff that we do is really for me and Mike, because that's what makes us feel good and committed to the business. And we have to make the boards look cool and work super well for our customers,
That's awesome. I think that's a good place to probably end it. Unless you guys have anything else you want to mention, plug, certainly check out your website. We'll have the details in the details box below, your Instagram. Is there any other thing you guys want to plug?
Oh, I don't
No,
know.
I think, we love it when people reach out to us with questions. That's been one of the most fun parts about this, and actually something that, I think we reached out to you with questions first, but just looking at the board behind you, I'm super excited to see you glass it and see it get in the water.
Thanks.
So anything that we can do to sort of make 3D printing surfboards more of a widespread thing, we're happy to work with people and try to make it more popular.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, in a couple of years, I'd love to touch base with you guys again and see how things go. So thanks so much
I'll have to get back up to Nova. I was up in Nova Scotia this fall, but didn't make it down to where you are, but definitely have to get back up there soon for another swell.
Nice. Yeah, especially when there's a big swell. There's some good point breaks up here.
Yeah.
We're good on point
yeah.
breaks up here. So yeah. So I appreciate you guys, having a chat, and hopefully people will go check you guys out and buy a board.
Yeah. Thank
Be
you very
great.
much for the time. Yeah.
No problem.
Good
Thank
to
you,
talk to
Andrew.
you.